The cell phone footage freezes on Maya Wilson's face, her eyes wide with terror, as Officer Daniels aims his weapon at her chest while she clutches baby Elijah. The video has 10 million views already. What nobody knows yet is that this single moment will bring down an entire police department. If this shocking moment has caught your attention, make sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to follow this incredible story of injustice and the fight for accountability. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments below as we dive deeper into how a routine traffic stop turned into a national movement for justice. The morning had started like any other Tuesday for Maya Wilson. The 32-year-old elementary school teacher had just finished her weekly grocery shopping with 8-month-old Elijah strapped securely in his car seat, gurgling happily as they drove through the brosant sun-dappled streets of Riverdale, Georgia. As a single mother, these small moments of normalcy were precious to Maya, brief respites between the demanding hours of teaching fourth graders and the beautiful chaos of raising a baby boy alone. She hummed along to Elijah's favorite nursery rhyme, playing softly on the car stereo, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror to catch his toothless smile. The spring air carried the scent of magnolias through her partially open window, and Maya felt a rare moment of perfect contentment. She had no way of knowing that in less than 20 minutes her world would shatter completely. The first indication that something was wrong came in the form of flashing blue lights in her mirror. Maya checked her speed instinctively. She'd been driving 5 miles under the limit, as she always did with Elijah in the car. She signaled and pulled carefully to the curb, reaching for her purse, where she kept her license and registration. Through her rearview mirror, she watched 2 officers emerge from the patrol car, and something about their aggressive stance sent the first prickle of unease down her spine. Officer Trevor Daniels approached the driver's side, while his partner, Officer Kyle Reeves, positioned himself by the passenger window. License and registration, Daniels barked without preamble, his hand resting conspicuously on his holster. Maya maintained her composure, years of dealing with difficult parents and administrators having trained her to stay calm under pressure. "Of course, officer," she replied, reaching slowly for her documents. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" Daniel's face remained impassive. "Broken taillight." Maya frowned slightly. "I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know. I'll get it fixed right away." As she handed over her license and registration, Daniels spotted the small Black Lives Matter keychain attached to her car keys. His expression darkened visibly. "Got something to say about police, do you?" he asked, his tone shifting from professional detachment to something harder. Maya felt her heart rate accelerate. "No, sir. I respect the work police do in our community." She glanced toward Elijah, who had begun to sense the tension and was becoming restless. Officer Reeves peered through the passenger window, his flashlight beam sweeping across the back seat where Elijah sat. "What's in those grocery bags?" he asked, though they were clearly visible, ordinary shopping from the local Kroger. The situation was escalating for no apparent reason, and Maya's teacher instincts told her to document what was happening. "Officers, I'm going to call my sister if that's all right. She's an attorney." Without waiting for permission, Maya reached for her phone and quickly dialed Zora Wilson. When her sister answered, Maya immediately put the call on speaker. "Zora, I've been pulled over by police in Riverdale. 2 officers. I'm with Elijah. They say I have a broken taillight." She could hear the forced calm in her own voice. Daniel's face contorted with anger. "Put the phone down now," he shouted, startling Elijah, who began to cry. "I see something suspicious in the vehicle." "Step out of the car immediately." Maya felt panic rising but fought to stay composed. "Officer, please. My baby is upset. There's nothing suspicious in my car. Just groceries and baby supplies." Out now, Daniels unholstered his weapon, pointing it toward Maya. On the phone, Zora's voice became urgent. "Maya, stay calm. I'm recording this call. Officers, please identify yourselves by name and badge number." Maya carefully unbuckled her seatbelt, then reached back to unstrap Elijah from his car seat. "I'm coming out, but I need to bring my baby," she said, her voice trembling, despite her efforts to appear calm. As Maya stepped out of the car with Elijah clutched protectively against her chest, she was aware of movement across the street. Tanya Jackson, a neighbor she knew from community events, had emerged from her house and was holding up her phone recording the encounter. Several other neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion. "She's got a weapon." Daniels suddenly shouted, though Maya's hands were fully visible, one supporting Elijah's body, the other cradling his head. "No, I don't have anything," Maya cried, turning slightly to show she was unarmed. Elijah wailing in distress. The next seconds unfolded in horrifying slow motion. 2 gunshots cracked through the suburban quiet. Maya felt a searing pain tear through her left shoulder. Somehow, through shock and maternal instinct, she maintained her grip on Elijah as she crumpled to the ground, curling her body around her son to protect him from further bullets. Screams erupted from the gathering neighbors. Tanya Jackson ran toward them, still filming. "She's been shot. She has a baby. What are you doing?" Officer Reeves stood, frozen horror etched across his features as he stared at his partner. "Daniels, what the hell? She doesn't have a weapon." Through a haze of pain, Maya was aware of people rushing toward her, of Elijah being gently taken from her arms by someone who promised to keep him safe of the warm stickiness of blood soaking through her spring blouse. From the phone that had fallen to the pavement beside her, Zora's voice could be heard screaming her sister's name. Sirens wailed in the distance as someone in the crowd, a retired nurse, applied pressure to Maya's wound. Officer Daniels stood over them, still pointing his weapon, seemingly in shock at what he had done but unwilling to stand down. Officer Reeves finally pushed his partner's arm down. "Holster your weapon. What is wrong with you?" he hissed before radioing frantically for an ambulance. Maya drifted in and out of consciousness. As paramedics arrived, loaded her onto a stretcher, and rushed her to Riverdale Memorial Hospital. Her last coherent thought before the anesthesia took hold in the emergency room was of Elijah. Was he safe? Was he hurt? Had the bullet gone through her and struck him too? When she next opened her eyes, Zora was at her bedside, tracks staining her face, her normally impeccable appearance disheveled from rushing to the hospital. Elijah Maya croaked, her throat dry from intubation. "He's okay," Zora assured her, squeezing her hand. "Not a scratch on him. Mrs. Jackson from across the street is watching him. She's brought him to visit twice while you were sedated." Relief flooded through Maya momentarily, overshadowing the throbbing pain in her shoulder. "The officer. He shot me. For nothing, Zora. For absolutely nothing." Zora's expression hardened the civil rights attorney in her coming to the surface. "I know. I heard it all. And Mrs. Jackson's video is already everywhere. 10 million views in 3 hours. The whole world is watching now." Maya closed her eyes, tears seeping from beneath her lids. "I just wanted to buy groceries and go home with my baby," she whispered. And now Zora's voice took on a steel edge Maya had heard before, when her sister was preparing for her biggest cases. "Now we fight. That officer, the department, the whole system that made him think he could shoot an unarmed black woman holding her baby, they picked the wrong family to mess with." Within 6 hours of Maya Wilson being shot, Riverdale Police Chief Richard Holloway stood behind a podium at the department headquarters, cameras flashing as he delivered the official response. "At approximately 11:15 this morning, 2 of our officers conducted a routine traffic stop that unfortunately escalated when the suspect made a sudden movement that our officer reasonably believed posed an imminent threat," he stated. His jowly face arranged in an expression of grave concern that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him stood a wall of officers in uniform, their faces impassive. Officer Daniels, a decorated 7-year veteran of the force, discharged his weapon as per his training when he observed the suspect reaching for what he believed could be a weapon. The assembled press corps scribbled notes while social media commentators watching the live stream erupted with outrage at Maya being labeled a suspect when her only crime had been driving with a taillight she didn't know was press corps. Broken. Chief Holloway continued. "We are releasing edited body cam footage that corroborates our officer's account. The footage shown to reporters had been carefully selected, a jerky partial view of Maya exiting the vehicle with a convenient skip in the recording at the critical moment, followed by the aftermath. The audio had been enhanced to make Maya's movements seem more aggressive than they were. By evening, local news channels were running with the police department's narrative, albeit with the cautious disclaimer that witnesses dispute this account. Only one station, led by a veteran black female anchor, pointedly juxtaposed the official body cam footage with Tanya Jackson's civilian recording, highlighting the discrepancies. At Riverdale Memorial Hospital, Zora Wilson sat beside her sister's bed laptop, open, monitoring the unfolding media coverage with growing fury. Maya drifted in and out of sleep, the pain medication making her thoughts foggy. When she was lucid, her first question was always about Elijah. "He's perfect," Zora assured her for the third time that evening. "Mrs. Jackson says he's eating well and sleeping normally. She sent this picture an hour ago." She showed Maya a photo of Elijah clutching his favorite stuffed elephant, peaceful in slumber. "The doctor says you can probably go home tomorrow or the next day. The bullet went through clean, missed anything vital. You were incredibly lucky, Maya." Maya didn't feel lucky. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Officer Daniels' face, the cold determination in his eyes as he pointed his weapon at her. She felt the phantom weight of Elijah in her arms as she fell. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. Zora's expression transformed, her features hardening with resolve. "Now I pull every string call in every favor and use every legal tool at my disposal to make sure Officer Daniels and everyone who enabled him faces consequences." She turned her laptop so Maya could see the screen. "I've been doing some digging. This isn't Daniels' first rodeo. He has 3 prior excessive force complaints, all filed by black citizens, all dismissed without serious investigation." Maya wasn't surprised, just weary. "And nothing will happen this time either." "It never does." Zora clasped her sister's hand. "This time is different. This time there's video that clearly shows you were unarmed holding a baby. This time the victim is a beloved elementary school teacher with no record, not someone they can easily villainize. This time the victim's sister is me, and I will not stop until there's justice." While Maya rested, Zora worked the phone, calling contacts from her years of civil rights litigation. She reached out to Marcus Chen, a former law school classmate who now worked at the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division. "Marcus, I need you to look into something urgently," she said, pacing the hospital corridor. "Riverdale, PD, in Georgia. I think there's a pattern of similar incidents." After listening to the details, Marcus promised to make inquiries discreetly. "If what you're describing is systematic, Zora, it falls under federal jurisdiction. Send me everything you have." Meanwhile, across town, Tanya Jackson was discovering the cost of bearing witness. 2 Riverdale police cruisers had been parked outside her home since she'd uploaded the video. When she left to buy formula for Elijah, she was pulled over 3 blocks from her house for rolling through a stop sign that didn't exist. The officer made her wait for 45 minutes on the roadside before finally letting her go without a ticket. When she returned home, she found her mailbox had been smashed. None of it deterred her. "They can intimidate me all they want," she told Zora on the phone. "I know what I saw. That officer shot your sister for absolutely no reason, and I'm not going to be quiet about it." Working through her legal connections, Zora managed to obtain the complete unedited body cam footage through a court order, an unusually quick victory that spoke to the gravity of the case and the public attention it was receiving. The unedited video told a completely different story than the police narrative. It clearly showed Maya being cooperative, Officer Daniels becoming agitated upon seeing her Black Lives Matter keychain, and the escalation that followed. Most damningly, it captured Maya fully turning to show she was unarmed before Daniels fired. Armed with this evidence, Zora approached the local prosecutor, a man named Gerald Whitman, who had worked closely with the Riverdale PD for 15 years. "This is as clear-cut as it gets, Gerald," she argued, playing the unedited footage on her tablet. "Unprovoked shooting of an unarmed woman holding a baby. I want charges filed immediately." Whitman shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. "The evidence is concerning," he admitted reluctantly. "But these cases are complicated, Zora. Officer Daniels has his side of the story. There's the matter of qualified immunity. And frankly, juries in this county tend to give officers the benefit of the doubt." Zora leaned forward, eyes flashing. Are you seriously telling me you're not going to charge a police officer who shot an elementary school teacher holding her baby when video clearly shows she posed no threat? Whitman spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. I'm saying I need to review all the evidence carefully before making any decisions. These things take time. Time is the one thing Officer Daniels doesn't deserve, Zora shot back, gathering her materials. But fine. Take your time, Gerald. Just know that if you don't act, the feds will. And they won't be as friendly to your police department as you've been. As Maya recovered in the hospital, the threats began. Anonymous callers to the hospital switchboard demanded to know her room number. Social media accounts with thin profiles and American flag avatars posted messages like, "Should have complied and play stupid games, win stupid prizes." One particularly disturbing message included Maya's home address with the words, "We know where you live." Hospital security was increased. Maya's school principal visited, bringing cards from her students and assurances that her job was waiting for her whenever she felt ready to return. "The parents and staff are behind you, 100%, he told her, though his eyes betrayed worry about potential backlash from the community. Just as the police had their supporters, however, Maya had hers, and they proved to be greater in number and determination. A GoFundMe for her medical expenses reached $50,000 in 24 hours. Volunteers established a meal train and childcare network for when she would return home. Students' parents organized a letter-writing campaign to the mayor and city council, demanding accountability. Community leaders held a prayer vigil outside the hospital. And across the country, Maya's story joined the tragically long list of Black Americans victimized by police violence, her name chanted at rallies, her image on protest signs. Through it all, Maya focused on healing, physically from the gunshot wound and emotionally from the trauma. Every unexpected noise made her flinch. She had nightmares about Elijah being taken from her arms. The idea of ever being pulled over by police again filled her with paralyzing terror. But she also found reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed, bolstered by Zora's fierce advocacy and the community's support. "I'm not just fighting for myself," she told her sister as they prepared for her discharge from the hospital 5 days after the shooting. "I'm fighting for Elijah. He deserves to grow up in a world where he's not seen as a threat because of his skin color, where police protect him, not hunt him." Zora nodded, helping Maya into a wheelchair for the hospital's mandatory exit protocol. "And that's exactly why we're not going to stop until we've torn down the entire corrupt system in Riverdale and rebuilt something better from the ground up." Have you ever wondered what happens in police departments behind closed doors when no one is watching? Can you imagine the conversations that take place when officers think no one from the outside will ever hear them? Would you believe that? Some departments have actual lists of citizens they target based solely on race. If you're as shocked by this case as I am, hit that like button right now and subscribe to stay updated as this story unfolds. Comment number 1. If you think Officer Daniels should be immediately fired and charged, or comment number 2, if you believe the police department's story that Maya was somehow a threat while holding her baby. Let's dive deeper into the disturbing discoveries that would shake the Riverdale Police Department to its core. The day after Maya was released from the hospital, Zora Wilson partnered with Devin Walsh, an investigative journalist known for his unflinching coverage of police misconduct cases. They met in a quiet corner of a coffee shop 3 towns over from Riverdale, away from prying eyes and potential police surveillance. "I've been covering police departments for 15 years, Devin said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "What's happening in Riverdale follows a pattern I've seen before, but with some particularly troubling elements." The folder contained screenshots from a private Facebook group called Riverdale's Finest Unfiltered. Membership was restricted to verified Riverdale police officers and select police supporters. The content was a cesspool of racist memes, violent fantasies about teaching lessons to residents of predominantly Black neighborhoods, and derogatory comments about previous victims of police violence. Officer Daniels was one of the most active members, having posted just 2 days before shooting Maya. "Pulled over another entitled BLM supporter today. One of these days they'll learn respect the hard way." Zora felt her stomach turn as she flipped through the pages. "How did you get access to this?" Devin's expression was grim. "I have sources. That's all I can say. But everything in that folder is verified and authenticated. I've sent it all to my digital forensics guy who can testify to its authenticity if needed. Their coffee grew cold as they strategized. Devon would publish a carefully researched exposé while Zora pursued legal avenues. Both agreed that building public pressure was essential to preventing a cover-up. Their meeting was interrupted by a text message from an unknown number parking garage. Level 3. Blue sedan. Come alone. Devon raised an eyebrow. Cryptic. Could be a trap. Zora considered, then shook her head. Or it could be someone with information who's scared. I need to take the chance. With Devon watching from a distance as backup, Zora approached the blue sedan. The driver's window lowered just enough to reveal Officer Kyle Reeves Daniels' partner during the shooting. Get in, he said, his voice barely audible. I can't be seen talking to you. Inside the car, Reeves was a bundle of nerves, constantly checking his mirrors and keeping his voice low. What I'm about to tell you could end my career, maybe worse. But I can't sleep at night anymore. What Daniels did to your sister, it wasn't random. It wasn't a mistake. Zora recorded the conversation as Reeves revealed the existence of what officers called the thumper list, black residents targeted for harassment, excessive tickets, and aggressive stops. The list was Daniels' pet project, but Chief Holloway not only knew about it, he encouraged it as part of an unwritten policy of proactive policing in black neighborhoods. Daniels has had your sister's name on that list for months, Reeves confessed. Because she spoke at a school board meeting supporting more diverse history curriculum. He considered her one of those troublemakers. The revelation that Maya had been deliberately targeted sent a chill through Zora. This wasn't just one bad officer. It was systematic racism woven into the department's operations. Reeves continued, providing details of evidence tampering in cases involving minority victims and explaining how complaint records against certain officers mysteriously disappeared from the system. There's a reason Daniels had 3 complaints that went nowhere. Records get altered, witnesses get pressured, evidence gets lost. Zora's legal mind was already cataloging the potential federal violations. Kyle, would you be willing to testify to all this? Reeves looked terrified at the prospect. I'd need guarantees. Protection. Immunity. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. These guys. They don't play around with what they consider betrayal. Meanwhile, Maya was adjusting to life post-shooting. Her physical wound was healing, but the psychological trauma manifested in unexpected ways. During her first attempt to give Elijah a bath after returning home, the sound of running water triggered a panic attack, so severe that Tanya Jackson, who'd been helping with childcare, had to take over. Nightmares plagued her sleep. Elijah, sensitive to his mother's distress, became clingy and easily startled, crying at loud noises and unfamiliar faces. Maya's therapist explained that even at 8 months, babies could absorb and react to trauma. He felt your fear and the sudden disruption, she told Maya during a home session. But children are resilient. With consistency and security, he'll recover. Maya clung to this hope as she worked through her own recovery process. Zora and Devon continued their investigation, connecting with other families who had experienced harassment from the Riverdale PD. A pattern emerged. Minor infractions escalated to excessive force, followed by charges that were later dropped, culminating in civil settlements with non-disclosure agreements to silence victims. The city had paid out over $2 million in the past 5 years alone, all approved quietly by the city council in closed sessions. While Maya recovered and Zora built her case, Officer Daniels remained on paid administrative leave, essentially a taxpayer-funded vacation. Sources within the department reported he was confident he'd be cleared. Just gotta wait for the noise to die down, he was overheard telling fellow officers at a local bar. Then it's back to business as usual. His certainty spoke volumes about the system's historical protection of officers like him. Support for Maya continued to grow. Her elementary school held a rally where students released yellow balloons, Maya's favorite color, and recorded messages of love and encouragement. Local businesses displayed "Justice for Maya" signs. The mayor, feeling the political pressure, issued a carefully worded statement expressing concern about the incident while stopping short of condemning the police department. Chief Holloway countered with his own press offensive, appearing on friendly local media outlets to defend his department and subtly undermine Maya's character with references to her political activism, as if supporting diverse activism as education materials made her somehow deserving of violence. The turning point came unexpectedly. Late one night, Zora received a package at her office containing a thumb drive with no note or indication of its sender. Following proper digital forensic protocols, she had her IT expert verify it wasn't malware before examining the contents. The drive contained internal Riverdale PD emails, text messages between officers and departmental memos spanning the past 3 years. The communications revealed a culture of systemic racism, far beyond what even Zora had suspected. Officers routinely referred to black neighborhoods as the jungle and residents as animals. Arrest quotas were higher for predominantly black areas. Officers who raised concerns were relegated to desk duty or worse. Most damning were emails directly linking Chief Holloway to the targeting of black community members who spoke out at public meetings, including Maya. Keep an eye on the Wilson woman. Read one email from Holloway to Daniels, sent 2 months before the shooting. She's stirring up trouble at the school board. Might be worth a special traffic detail on her route. The evidence was overwhelming, painting a picture not of a few bad apples, but of an entire department rotten to its core. As Zora compiled the evidence for the Department of Justice, she was acutely aware of the danger her sister still faced. Maya and Elijah had moved temporarily to Zora's home for safety, but the threats continued. Anonymous callers, strange cars driving slowly past the house. The unspoken message was clear: stop pursuing this or face consequences. But for every threat, there were 10 messages of support. For every officer closing ranks around Daniels, there were 100 citizens demanding justice. The tide was turning, and Zora could feel it. "We're going to win this," she told Maya one evening, as they watched Elijah playing on a blanket, his innocent laughter a reminder of everything at stake. "Not just for you, but for everyone who's been silenced by this department. This stops now." What secrets will continue to emerge as this investigation deepens? How far up does the corruption go in Riverdale? And what will it take to truly transform a system designed to protect its own at all costs? Stay tuned for the next part of this shocking true story. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. In the weeks following the shooting, Zora Wilson's life became an endless cycle of legal research, evidence compilation, and strategic planning. Her civil rights practice effectively went on hold as she dedicated every waking hour to building an airtight case against the Riverdale Police Department. Her dining room transformed into a war room, walls covered with timelines, officer profiles, and connections between incidents that painted a picture of systematic abuse. The physical toll was evident in the dark circles under her eyes and the weight she'd lost, but her determination never wavered. "You need to rest," Maya urged one night, finding her sister still working at 3 in the morning. Zora shook her head, scrolling through yet another affidavit. "I'll rest when Daniels is behind bars and that department is dismantled." The breakthrough came when Marcus Chen from the Department of Justice called to inform her that the case had caught the attention of FBI Special Agent Vanessa Rodriguez, who specialized in civil rights violations and police misconduct investigations. "She's the best in the field," Zora Marcus explained. "When Rodriguez takes a case, things happen. She's put more corrupt officers behind bars than anyone in Bureau history." Agent Rodriguez arrived in Riverdale without fanfare, a compact woman with keen eyes that missed nothing and a reputation that preceded her. She met with Zora in a secure location, reviewing the mountain of evidence with methodical precision. "You've done exceptional preliminary work," Rodriguez acknowledged, examining the trove of internal communications. "This isn't just about Officer Daniels. This is about a culture of racism and corruption that permeates the entire department." While the legal case gained momentum, Maya struggled with the challenges of returning to normal life. Her first attempt to go grocery shopping ended in disaster when the automatic doors made a sound similar to the patrol car doors slamming shut. She froze in the entrance, heart-racing, vision tunneling, until a kind store manager helped her to a chair and called Tanya Jackson to pick her up. Elijah, still sensitive to his mother's emotional state, cried inconsolably whenever Maya showed signs of distress. The community remained divided in their response to the shooting. Most residents supported Maya, attending rallies, donating to her recovery fund, and demanding accountability. However, a vocal minority, many with connections to law enforcement, backed the police narrative. They organized counter-protests, holding signs with slogans like "Back the Blue" and "Support our officers." These gatherings often took an ugly turn, with participants hurling racial slurs at Maya's supporters and making threatening gestures. The police response to these confrontations was telling. Officers quickly arrested Maya's supporters for minor infractions like standing in the street, while allowing counter-protesters to engage in far more disruptive behavior without consequence. Despite the increasing pressure, Officer Reeves finally made the difficult decision to break ranks completely. After extensive negotiations with federal prosecutors, he secured an immunity deal in exchange for his full testimony about departmental practices. "I can't be part of this anymore," he told Agent Rodriguez during his formal statement. "What happened to Miss Wilson wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was the predictable result of a culture that treats black citizens as enemies rather than community members we're sworn to protect." Zora's professional standing came under attack as the case gained prominence. Clients were pressured to drop her representation. The state bar received anonymous complaints alleging ethical violations. Her office received so many threatening calls that she had to hire a service to screen them. None of it deterred her. "They're scared," she told Maya. When people with power lash out like this, it means they know they're losing their grip on that power. Maya's recovery was complicated by mounting financial pressures. Even with the community fundraising, her medical bills exceeded $100,000. Her health insurance covered only a portion, and the extended time away from teaching strained her limited savings. The physical therapy for her shoulder alone cost hundreds of dollars per session. Tanya Jackson continued to face retaliation for her role in documenting the shooting. Her home was vandalized with racist graffiti, snitch spray-painted across her garage door. When she reported it, the police took 4 hours to respond and filed a report that classified it as general vandalism rather than a hate crime or intimidation. The officer who took the report asked if she was sure she hadn't done it herself for attention. Within the Riverdale PD, Agent Rodriguez's investigation created waves of panic. Some officers, recognizing which way the wind was blowing, began cooperating, quietly providing additional evidence of misconduct. Others doubled down on the cover-up, with Chief Holloway at the center of the resistance. Delete everything he instructed during a closed-door meeting with trusted officers. Emails, texts, anything that could be misinterpreted. Department policy requires regular purging of electronic communications for security purposes. What Holloway didn't know was that the department's IT specialist, disturbed by what he had witnessed over years of maintaining the police computer systems, secretly preserved copies of everything before the mass deletion began. This digital archive would become crucial evidence in the expanding federal investigation. As the case gained national attention, Devin published his first major article exposing the Riverdale PD's history of racism. The piece was meticulously researched, backed by dozens of interviews with former officers, victims of police misconduct, and civil rights experts. It detailed how the department had evolved over decades, from openly racist policies to more subtle but equally damaging practices that disproportionately targeted black residents. Social media erupted with the hashtag #JusticeForMaya, which began trending nationally. Celebrities and influencers shared Maya's story, amplifying the calls for accountability. Politicians who had initially remained silent on the issue began making statements condemning police violence and calling for reform. The grassroots movement was growing into a national reckoning. Agent Rodriguez expanded her investigation, interviewing dozens of current and former Riverdale officers. With each testimony, the picture grew clearer. The department had operated as a law unto itself for years, with Chief Holloway protecting officers who engaged in misconduct while punishing those who tried to report problems. The FBI investigation sent shockwaves through Riverdale's power structure. City officials who had long enabled the police department's behavior began distancing themselves, fearing they too might face scrutiny. The mayor, who had initially backed Chief Holloway unconditionally, now spoke of letting the investigation run its course and implementing necessary reforms. For Maya, watching the case unfold while trying to heal created a complex mix of emotions. "I never wanted to be the face of a movement," she confided to Zora one evening. "I just wanted to teach my students and raise my son in peace. Now my name is on protest signs across the country." Zora understood her sister's ambivalence. "You didn't choose this fight, Maya. It chose you. But what you are choosing is to stand up rather than be silenced. That courage is inspiring people everywhere." As evidence mounted and public pressure intensified, the first cracks appeared in the blue wall of silence. Junior officers, fearing for their careers, as the extent of the federal investigation became clear, began cooperating in exchange for leniency. Each new testimony reinforced the pattern of systematic discrimination and abuse of power that had flourished under Chief Holloway's leadership. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of Riverdale and potentially police departments across the country. The question was no longer if the Riverdale PD would face a reckoning, but how soon and how complete that reckoning would be. As the federal investigation gained momentum, the Riverdale Police Union mobilized a fierce counteroffensive. The union president, a 20-year department veteran named Frank Mercer, held a press conference on the steps of City Hall flanked by dozens of officers in uniform. "This witch hunt against our department is politically motivated," he declared, his face flushed with indignation. Officer Daniels responded according to his training when faced with a perceived threat. Now he's being crucified by anti-police activists and opportunistic politicians. Behind the scenes, the union activated its considerable political network. Donations flowed to city council members who publicly supported the police department. Local business owners who displayed justice for Maya signs reported unexpected health and safety inspections, resulting in questionable violations. The message was clear: stand with the police or face consequences. Unable to attack Maya's current character, her reputation as a dedicated teacher and loving mother was unassailable. The union's supporters began digging into her past. They uncovered a traffic ticket from 7 years earlier and a college arrest during a peaceful campus protest against tuition increases. These minor incidents were spun into evidence that Maya was no angel and had a history of disrespecting authority. The smear campaign reached its nadir when a police-supporting local blog published Maya's college photo alongside mugshots of unrelated black women arrested for violent crimes, creating a visual association that many readers unconsciously absorbed. Zora recognized the playbook from other cases she'd worked on. "They're trying to dehumanize you," she explained to Maya. "If they can make people see you as something other than an innocent victim, as someone who somehow deserved what happened, they can justify Daniel's actions." The tactics were as predictable as they were despicable, but knowledge didn't make them easier to endure. Maya wept when she saw her college protest photo misused not for herself, but for what it represented. "This is the world Elijah will grow up in," she said quietly, watching her son play with blocks on the living room floor. "A world where people will twist the truth to protect a system that sees him as a threat just because of his skin color." The resistance to change wasn't limited to public relations tactics. One night, while Maya was staying with Tanya Jackson for safety, Zora returned home to find her front door ajar. Inside, her home office had been ransacked, case files scattered, and her computer missing. The responding officers, deliberately sent from a neighboring jurisdiction to avoid conflict of interest, documented the break-in professionally, but held little hope of finding the perpetrators. "No fingerprints, no witnesses, no surveillance footage," the detective explained apologetically. These weren't amateurs. Zora allowed herself exactly 1 hour to feel violated and afraid. Then she got back to work, grateful for her obsessive habit of maintaining secure cloud backups of all case materials. "They think they've set us back," she told Agent Rodriguez the next day. "All they've done is confirm we're on the right track." The pressure extended beyond Zora to the federal investigators themselves. Agent Rodriguez discovered that the local FBI field office had long-standing ties to the Riverdale PD. Several agents had previously worked alongside Riverdale officers on joint task forces, creating conflicts of interest that threatened to undermine the investigation. When Rodriguez raised concerns about these connections, she found her access to certain resources suddenly restricted her requests for additional personnel delayed or denied. At the Department of Justice, Marcus Chen faced his own battles. His supervisor called him into a closed-door meeting where he was reminded that his promising career could be derailed by unnecessary controversy. The message was delivered with bureaucratic subtlety but unmistakable clarity: back off the Riverdale case or face professional consequences. Marcus left the meeting shaken but resolute. That evening he called Zora from a burner phone. "They're pulling strings at levels I didn't anticipate," he admitted. "But all that tells me is that this case matters more than we thought. Keep pushing. I've got your back, even if I have to be more careful about how I help." The turning point came at an emergency city council meeting called to address the growing crisis. The council chambers overflowed with citizens from across Riverdale, tension thick in the air, as police supporters and justice advocates sat on opposite sides of the room, glaring at each other across the divide. After 2 hours of heated public comments from both sides, Zora approached the podium. The room fell silent as she began to speak, her voice low, but carrying the weight of moral authority. "I'm not here to attack police officers who serve with integrity," she began, silencing the murmurs from the police supporters. "I'm here because integrity is exactly what's missing from the Riverdale Police Department. When an officer can shoot an unarmed woman holding a baby and face no immediate consequences, the system is broken. When that department can then mobilize to attack the victim rather than hold their own accountable, the system is corrupt. And when elected officials stand by silently while this happens in their city, they become complicit." She laid out the evidence methodically: the targeting of black residents, the pattern of excessive force, the intimidation of witnesses, the falsification of reports. With each point, she directed council members to specific documents in the packets she'd provided them, making it impossible for them to claim ignorance of the facts. "This isn't about one officer or one incident," she concluded. "This is about whether Riverdale will continue to allow a police department to operate as if certain citizens are the enemy. The world is watching now. History will remember what you choose to do in this moment." Her words electrified the chamber. Even some police supporters were visibly moved, particularly when Zora described how Elijah now cried whenever he saw anyone in a uniform. The council president, a normally cautious politician, promised immediate action, though what form that action would take remained to be seen. Outside the chamber, the battle for public opinion continued. Officer Daniels, coached by union lawyers, gave a carefully scripted interview to a sympathetic local television station. Seated in a softly lit studio wearing a crisp button-down shirt that concealed his usual muscular physique, he projected an image of reasonable professionalism. "I feared for my life and the safety of my partner," he stated, his voice catching in a well-rehearsed display of emotion. "In that split second, I had to make a decision based on my training and the movements I observed." The interview might have successfully swayed public opinion had it not been for what happened next. Within hours, the full unedited body cam video was anonymously uploaded to multiple platforms simultaneously. Unlike the edited version released by the department, this footage showed the entire encounter in devastating clarity. It captured Officer Daniels' reaction to Maya's Black Lives Matter keychain, his escalating aggression despite her calm compliance, and most damningly, the clear moment when Maya turned to show she was unarmed before Daniels fired. The Riverdale PD immediately claimed the video had been doctored. They brought in their own video analyst who pointed to supposed inconsistencies in the footage. But independent experts quickly confirmed the video's authenticity, including timestamps and metadata that matched the department's own records. The police narrative was crumbling in real time. From her hospital bed, now well enough to speak publicly, Maya gave her first interview. Unlike Daniel's carefully staged production, Maya's setting was starkly authentic. A hospital room with medical equipment still attached to her body, the bandages on her shoulder visible beneath her gown. She spoke without pretense about the terror of being shot while holding her child, about her ongoing physical pain and nightmares, about her fears for Elijah growing up in a society where such violence could be excused. "I don't hate Officer Daniels," she said, surprising the interviewer. "I pity anyone whose heart is so poisoned by prejudice that they can look at a mother and baby and see a threat. But pity doesn't mean he shouldn't face consequences. And it doesn't mean the system that created him shouldn't be reformed." Her dignity and compassion in the face of such injustice resonated with viewers across the political spectrum. The interview went viral, shared millions of times, with comments praising Maya's strength and character. Political pressure mounted as the governor, initially reluctant to involve himself in a local matter, called for an independent state investigation to run parallel to the federal inquiry. "While we must respect due process for all involved," he stated at a press conference, "the disturbing nature of this incident demands immediate and thorough examination at all levels of government." Behind this public stance lay political calculation. Public. The governor's advisors had shown him polling data indicating that voters across demographics supported Maya and were concerned about police accountability. As the case gained national prominence, Zora made a critical discovery that expanded the scope of the investigation dramatically. While reviewing financial records obtained through subpoena, she noticed a pattern of civil asset forfeitures, property seized by police during arrests, that disproportionately targeted Black-owned businesses and residents. Further investigation revealed that these seized assets, often taken without charges ever being filed, had funded equipment purchases and even unofficial bonuses for officers involved in major seizures. The corruption wasn't just racial, it was financial as well. Agent Rodriguez immediately widened her investigation to include potential money laundering and fraud charges. The evidence of financial misconduct provided additional leverage, as some officers who might stay silent about racial targeting became more cooperative when faced with potential economic crimes that carried significant prison time. The resistance to change was fierce, but the momentum for justice was building. Each new revelation strengthened the case against the department and weakened the political will to defend it. For Maya and Zora, the fight remained intensely personal, even as it expanded into a national conversation about policing and race. "This isn't just about what happened to me," Maya told supporters who gathered outside her home one evening for a candlelight vigil. "It's about making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else's child, anyone else's sister, anyone else's mother. It's about building a world where Elijah can grow up without fear of those sworn to protect him." What would you do if you saw your entire system of justice collapse around you? Would you stay silent in the face of overwhelming evidence of corruption, or would you find the courage to speak out? What does it take to break through decades of institutional protection and expose the truth? If you're still following this incredible story, hit that like button right now and subscribe to make sure you don't miss what happens next. Comment number 1 if you think more officers should have come forward sooner to expose the department's racism, or comment number 2 if you believe the blue wall of silence makes it impossible for good officers to speak out. Now let's witness the moment when the Riverdale Police Department finally began to crumble from within. The dam broke 3 weeks after Maya's interview aired. 3 Riverdale police officers, 2 veterans, and 1 rookie, TP, requested a meeting with Agent Rodriguez away from department premises. For 4 hours, they detailed a culture of racism, corruption, and intimidation that had flourished under Chief Holloway's leadership. They provided names, dates, specific incidents, and in some cases documentation they had secretly preserved, despite orders to destroy evidence. "I joined to serve my community," Officer Sarah Diaz explained, the youngest of the 3 whistleblowers. "What I found instead was a system designed to control and intimidate certain parts of that community. I can't be part of it anymore, no matter the cost." The officers' testimonies corroborated everything Zora had uncovered and added disturbing new details. They described how internal affairs investigations into complaints by Black residents were consistently buried or manipulated to clear officers of wrongdoing. They revealed that officer training materials contained subtle but unmistakable racial bias, with threat assessment scenarios disproportionately featuring black suspects described in coded language. Most disturbingly, they confirmed the existence of unofficial policies directing more aggressive enforcement in predominantly black neighborhoods, with rewards and favorable assignments for officers who generated high arrest numbers in these prive areas. For Maya, the physical healing progressed steadily, but the psychological wounds proved more persistent. Elijah, now 9 months old, had developed severe separation anxiety, screaming inconsolably whenever Maya put him down or stepped out of his sight. Child psychologists explained that the trauma of the shooting had disrupted his developing sense of security. He experienced a moment when his primary caregiver, his entire world, was suddenly injured and unresponsive, the specialist explained. For a baby, that's world-shattering. Maya devoted herself to rebuilding Elijah's sense of safety, holding him constantly despite the pain in her healing shoulder, sleeping beside his crib, and maintaining gentle, consistent routines. But in quiet moments she confessed to Zora her growing fear about remaining in Riverdale. "Maybe we should move somewhere else, start fresh," she suggested one evening. "Somewhere Elijah won't grow up as the baby from that police shooting video." Zora understood her sister's desire to escape, but counseled patience. "Running won't solve the underlying problem," she said gently. "And right now, your presence here is powerful. People can't dismiss this case as easily when they see you at the grocery store at church as a real person with a real life that was nearly destroyed." The case reached a crucial inflection point with a massive protest outside the Riverdale Police Department headquarters. Thousands gathered, many traveling from neighboring states, to join what had become a national cause. Signs bearing Maya's image and slogans demanding justice filled the streets. The crowd was diverse, young and old, representing all races and backgrounds, united in their call for accountability and reform. Facing this peaceful but determined demonstration was a smaller counter-protest organized by police supporters. Unlike the main protest's diversity, this group was overwhelmingly white and male, many wearing Blue Lives Matter apparel and carrying American flags. For hours, the two groups remained separated by barricades and a line of state troopers brought in specifically to avoid using Riverdale officers in a potential conflict of interest. As the day progressed, tensions escalated. The counter-protesters grew increasingly aggressive, shouting obscenities and racial slurs across the divide. When a group of clergy leading the main protest knelt in prayer, several counter-protesters threw water bottles and rocks. The state troopers moved to detain these individuals, but inexplicably, a group of off-duty Riverdale officers intervened, creating a chaotic confrontation. What happened next was captured by dozens of cameras and live-streamed to millions of viewers. Rather than arresting the individuals who had thrown objects, the Riverdale officers began detaining peaceful protesters from the main demonstration who had not been involved in any confrontation. The state troopers, caught by surprise and outranked locally, initially stood down before their commanding officer ordered them to intervene. The resulting clash between state and local law enforcement played out on national television and a literal visualization of the systemic conflict at the heart of the case. The footage of police officers protecting violent counter-protesters while arresting peaceful demonstrators crystallized public opinion. Calls for federal intervention intensified, and Agent Rodriguez responded by officially opening a full FBI investigation into the Riverdale PD. Simultaneously, the Department of Justice announced a broad civil rights inquiry into the department's patterns and practices. The announcements came as a 1-2 punch to the department's remaining defenders. Officer Daniels, who had maintained a public presence through carefully managed interviews, was finally suspended without pay following immense public pressure. He retreated from public view, reportedly leaving town to stay with relatives in another state. With formal investigations now underway at multiple levels, Chief Holloway called an emergency command staff meeting at department headquarters. Unknown to him, the conference room's audio system had been activated remotely by the FBI through cooperation with the department's IT specialist. As senior officers gathered, Holloway outlined a strategy of obstruction and denial. "We delete everything that isn't already subpoenaed," he instructed. "We coordinate our statements. Anyone asks you anything you don't recall. Period. We've weathered storms before, gentlemen. This is just another one. The recording was leaked to Devon Walsh within hours and published immediately, accompanied by a transcript and analysis. Chief Holloway's own words confirmed the cover-up in undeniable terms. The recording proved to be the final straw for many who had reserved judgment or given the department the benefit of the doubt. The State Attorney General announced a criminal investigation focusing specifically on obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Even the mayor, who had tried to maintain a neutral position throughout the crisis, called for Holloway's immediate resignation. In the midst of this institutional collapse, Maya finally returned to her home, though not without precautions. Neighbors organized an informal security patrol, taking shifts to watch the house and report any suspicious activity. Community members installed security cameras and motion sensor lighting. Local contractors volunteered to reinforce doors and windows. The message was clear: Maya and Elijah were under the community's protection now. During her first night back home, Maya sat in Elijah's room, watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. The stuffed elephant he loved was clutched in his tiny hands, his breathing deep and regular. Outside, she could hear the quiet conversations of neighbors standing vigil. Inside, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the shooting, a tentative sense of safety, of being held by a community that refused to abandon her. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her sleeping son, allowing herself to believe it might actually be true. As the department's leadership scrambled to contain the damage, more officers began coming forward, calculating that cooperation with investigators offered better long-term prospects than continued loyalty to a sinking ship. The blue wall of silence built over decades of mutual protection was crumbling brick by brick. The reckoning that Zora had promised on that first day in the hospital was finally arriving. How many more officers would break ranks and speak the truth? Would the entire department need to be rebuilt from scratch? And when the dust settled, what kind of justice system would emerge in Riverdale? The answers to these questions would shape not just one community's future, but potentially offer a blueprint for police reform nationwide. The raid began at dawn on a Wednesday morning, 43 days after Maya Wilson was shot. FBI agents in tactical gear simultaneously entered the Riverdale Police Department headquarters, the Records Division in a separate building, and the homes of Chief Holloway and 6 senior officers. The operation, planned in absolute secrecy after the recording leak revealed ongoing evidence destruction, caught department leadership completely off guard. Agents seized computers, phones, physical files, and personal devices. The sight of FBI personnel carrying boxes of evidence out of the police station while confused officers watched from behind crime scene tape became the defining image of the case. Law enforcement itself, now under investigation, the rectin fromini. Hunters become the hunted. Inside the department, a divide had formed between officers cooperating with federal authorities and those still maintaining the code of silence. Younger officers and those with less time invested in the corrupt system tended to cooperate, while veterans with decades of complicity had stronger incentives to obstruct. This division created a poisonous atmosphere where former partners refused to speak to each other and accusations of betrayal flew in both directions. During the second day of the raid, as agents methodically worked through decades of records, Chief Holloway was being questioned at the FBI field office. 4 hours into the interview, confronted with evidence of his direct involvement in covering up misconduct, Holloway clutched his chest and collapsed. Medical personnel rushed him to the hospital, where doctors confirmed he had suffered a major heart attack. As Holloway recovered in the cardiac unit, Deputy Chief William Barrett assumed command of the department. Rather than using the opportunity to change course, Barrett doubled down on defending the department's actions and attacking the investigation as politically motivated. "This is nothing but a witch hunt designed to appease activists and score political points," he told reporters outside the hospital after visiting Holloway. "The Riverdale Police Department has served this community with distinction for decades, and we reject any characterization of our officers as anything other than dedicated public servants." Barrett's defiance might have seemed brave to police supporters, but to investigators it simply added another name to their target list. Inside the department, Officer Kyle Reeves, having secured his immunity deal, provided devastating testimony about the systematic falsification of reports involving black suspects. There was an understood practice, he explained to federal prosecutors. If you arrested a black suspect, especially from certain neighborhoods, you enhanced the report, added resistance where there was compliance, claimed to see furtive movements that didn't happen, exaggerated any confrontation. These embellishments justified the use of force and made charges stick even when the initial stop was questionable. Even more disturbing were Reeves' revelations about evidence tampering. In at least 7 cases, I personally witnessed officers planted evidence on suspects they knew were guilty, but couldn't prove it legally. Small amounts of drugs primarily, but occasionally weapons too. The practice was so common, it had a nickname, sprinkling fairy dust. While Reeves and other cooperating officers laid out the department's systemic issues, Zora and Marcus Chen worked with federal prosecutors to build the criminal case against individual officers. The evidence they compiled went far beyond the shooting of Maya. It painted a picture of a department that had operated with impunity for years, secure in the knowledge that the system would protect its own. Maya herself began speaking at carefully selected community events, overcoming her anxiety to become the human face of the movement. She described the shooting her ongoing recovery and her fears for Elijah's future in a society where such violence could be excused. She spoke without bitterness or calls for vengeance, focusing instead on the need for accountability and reform. Her composure and dignity in the face of such injustice made her an extraordinarily effective advocate. National civil rights leaders arrived in Riverdale, recognizing the case's potential to drive broader reform. They organized larger protests, coordinated legal support, and brought national media attention that kept pressure on local officials. Their presence elevated what might have remained a local tragedy into a national inflection point in the ongoing conversation about policing and race. Under this intense scrutiny, the City Council finally found the courage to act. In a contentious 6-hour session, they voted to establish a civilian oversight board with real investigative powers and the authority to recommend discipline up to and including termination. The police union fought the measure fiercely, but public opinion had shifted so dramatically that even previously reliable police supporters on the council voted in favor. The investigation's scope continued to widen as digital forensics experts recovered texts and emails that officers believed had been permanently deleted. Among the most damning were messages from Officer Daniels, who had been located at a cabin owned by the police union president in the mountains 3 states away. The FBI arrested him there on federal civil rights charges, the images of him being led away in handcuffs playing on news stations nationwide. The recovered messages revealed Daniels had a long history of targeting black residents. "Got another one today," he texted a fellow officer 3 weeks before shooting Maya. "These people never learn. Pulled over some teacher with a BLM keychain. Next time she might not just get a ticket." The casual racism and implicit threat in these messages shocked even those who had supported Daniels initially. Other recovered communications exposed the department's racist culture in undeniable detail. A group chat among senior officers regularly shared racist memes and jokes. Officers referred to predominantly black neighborhoods as the zoo and discussed residents in dehumanizing terms. Training scenarios disproportionately depicted black suspects as dangerous and white suspects as misunderstood or mentally ill. The evidence was so overwhelming that even national police organizations initially supportive of the Riverdale Department began distancing themselves from the case. The final break came from an unexpected source. Barrett's administrative assistant, a civilian employee who had worked for the department for 22 years, approached Agent Rodriguez with a key to a storage unit rented in her deceased husband's name. Inside, investigators found boxes of original complaint forms that had been reported as lost or never filed. The complaints spanning 15 years documented a pattern of abuse against black residents that had been systematically buried from official records. The assistant explained that she had been ordered to destroy these documents multiple times, but had secretly preserved them, hoping someday they might matter. "I couldn't sleep at night, knowing these people had no voice," she told investigators. "But I was afraid of losing my job, my pension. I have grandkids to support. I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner." With this final piece of evidence, the case against the Riverdale PD was complete. What had begun as the shooting of one black woman had revealed a decades-long pattern of systematic racism and abuse of power. The department wasn't suffering from a few bad apples. The entire orchard was diseased. As Zora reviewed the mountain of evidence with her team, she remembered her promise to Maya in the hospital room those many weeks ago. "I told you we would tear down the entire corrupt system," she said to her sister that evening. "I just didn't realize how deep the corruption went, or how many brave people would step forward to help us do it." Maya nodded, watching Elijah play with blocks on the floor, building towers and knocking them down with delighted giggles. "When does the rebuilding start?" she asked quietly. "Because tearing down is just the beginning. What matters is what we build in its place." Her question hung in the air between them, a challenge not just for their family or their community, but for a nation still grappling with the complicated legacy of race and policing. The walls had closed in on the Riverdale Police Department, but the harder work of creating something better was just beginning. The federal courthouse in downtown Riverdale had never seen such activity. Security checkpoints extended for blocks as a federal grand jury convened to hear evidence against the Riverdale Police Department. Inside the imposing stone, building a procession of officers, victims, experts, and witnesses, testified day after day, their evidence building an incontrovertible case of systematic civil rights violations spanning decades. After 2 weeks of testimony, the grand jury returned indictments against 12 officers, including Daniels and former Chief Holloway. The charges ranged from civil rights violations and excessive force to obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. Most shocking to the community were the indictments of Deputy Chief Barrett and 3 other command staff members on charges of conspiracy and obstruction. The scope of the corruption had reached every level of department leadership. The indictments were just the beginning. Based on the evidence presented, federal prosecutors worked with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to compile a comprehensive report on the department's patterns and practices. The 200-page document, released to the public in its entirety, detailed a half-century of discriminatory policing. It traced how overtly racist policies from the Jim Crow era had evolved into more subtle but equally damaging practices in modern times. The report revealed that black residents of Riverdale were 7 times more likely to experience force during police encounters than white residents. Traffic stops in black neighborhoods lasted on average 3 times longer than in white neighborhoods. Complaints filed by black residents were 86% less likely to result in officer discipline compared to identical complaints filed by white residents. Perhaps most damning was the evidence that department leadership had knowingly cultivated these disparities while publicly denying their existence. The report's impact was seismic. The mayor, whose emails revealed he had been warned about department issues years earlier but had taken no action, was forced to resign amid public outrage. The city manager followed shortly after. The state government, recognizing that local leadership had catastrophically failed in its oversight duties, took emergency control of the Riverdale Police Department. An interim police chief was appointed from outside, a respected reformer who had successfully transformed troubled departments in other states. Her first official act was to place 37 officers on administrative leave pending further investigation. With the department's leadership decimated and its practices under scrutiny, the community began the difficult process of healing. Truth and reconciliation forums were organized where residents could share their experiences with police misconduct. Many white residents expressed shock at the stories they heard, having experienced a completely different relationship with the same department that had terrorized their black neighbors. These conversations, though painful, began building bridges across Riverdale's racial divide. For Maya, the most significant development was her opportunity to testify before the grand jury. Wheeled into the chamber by Zora, her shoulder still not fully healed, she faced the jurors with quiet dignity. For 2 hours, she recounted not just the shooting but its aftermath, the pain, the nightmares, Elijah's trauma, the threats, the community's division, and her ongoing recovery. Prosecutors later told Zora that Maya's testimony had visibly moved several jurors to tears and had been instrumental in securing the indictments. Elijah, now approaching his first birthday, was slowly recovering from his trauma with the help of specialized therapy. The psychologist worked with Maya to establish consistent routines and rebuild his sense of security. His separation anxiety gradually improved, and he began allowing other trusted adults to hold him without panicking. Each small victory, sleeping through the night, playing independently for short periods, not crying at loud noises, felt monumental to Maya. Her own recovery progressed in parallel with her son's. Physical therapy restored most of the function to her injured shoulder, though doctors warned she might never regain full strength or range of motion. The psychological healing proved more complex. She still experienced flashbacks triggered by police sirens or unexpected loud noises. Returning to the intersection where the shooting occurred remained impossible. But with therapy and the support of her growing community of advocates, Maya found herself moving from victim to survivor to activist. Zora's professional trajectory transformed as well. What had begun as a personal crusade for her sister's justice evolved into a broader mission. Working closely with DOJ officials, she helped develop the consent decree that would govern Riverdale's police reforms. The comprehensive document mandated implicit bias training, community oversight, transparent disciplinary procedures, body camera requirements, and dozens of other specific changes. Unlike previous reform efforts in other cities, this decree had real teeth. Failure to comply would result in federal receivership of the department. As the criminal cases moved toward trial, Officer Daniels' attorney approached prosecutors about a plea deal. The offer was straightforward. Daniels would testify against his former colleagues in exchange for a reduced sentence. To the attorney's shock, prosecutors rejected the deal outright. "Your client shot an unarmed woman holding a baby," the lead prosecutor stated bluntly. "There will be no special consideration. He can cooperate and will inform the court of that cooperation at sentencing, but he will face the maximum charges, and we will seek the maximum penalties." The decision sent a clear message that reverberated through police departments nationwide. The old rules of protection and leniency for law enforcement no longer applied. The system that had sheltered officers from consequences was itself changing. For Maya, the most difficult moment of the legal process came when she faced Officer Daniels in court for the first time since the shooting. During a preliminary hearing, she found herself just 30 feet away from the man who had nearly killed her and traumatized her son. Daniels, in a suit rather than his uniform, looked smaller, somehow diminished by the setting and circumstances. When their eyes met briefly, Maya felt not the fear she had expected, but a surprising calm. He no longer held power over her. In that moment, she understood that regardless of the legal outcome, she had already reclaimed something essential that the shooting had tried to take from her, her sense of self-determination. When given the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement, Maya spoke with grace and devastating clarity. "Officer Daniels didn't just shoot me that day," she told the hushed courtroom. "He shot at the future I had planned for my son. He shot at the safety I thought we had in our community. He shot at my faith in the systems that are supposed to protect us. The bullet that went through my shoulder also went through every assumption I had about justice in this country." She paused, looking directly at Daniels. "But here's what that bullet didn't do. It didn't stop me from loving my son and teaching him to be brave in a world that will sometimes fear him for no reason. It didn't stop our community from coming together and demanding better. And it didn't stop the truth from eventually coming to light." Her words were reported nationwide, encapsulating for many the larger significance of what had begun as one more tragically common incident of police violence against a Black American. As the cases proceeded through the legal system, the work of reimagining policing in Riverdale continued. The interim chief implemented immediate changes, prohibiting chokeholds and no-knock warrants requiring de-escalation attempts before force could be used, establishing a duty to intervene when officers witnessed misconduct by colleagues. More fundamental reforms would take longer, but had begun in earnest, redirecting certain emergency calls to mental health professionals instead of armed officers, creating unarmed community service officers for nonviolent issues, implementing regular psychological screening for all personnel. For both Maya and Zora, the most meaningful development was watching ordinary citizens become engaged in the process of public safety reform. People who had never attended a city council meeting were now regular participants in police oversight discussions. Neighborhood watch groups transformed into community care networks that addressed root causes of crime like poverty and lack of opportunity. What had begun as a response to tragedy was evolving into a model for community-centered public safety. This isn't just about punishing bad officers. Zora explained to a national news program that featured the Riverdale case as an example of potential reform. It's about creating systems where officers don't have the opportunity or incentive to abuse power in the first place. It's about redefining what safety means and who gets to feel safe in America. The federal courthouse was packed beyond capacity on the first day of Officer Trevor Daniels' trial. Journalists from across the country filled the media section. Sketch artists captured the scene since cameras weren't allowed, and members of the public lined up before dawn, hoping for one of the limited spectator seats. Maya and Zora Wilson sat in the front row directly across from the defense table where Daniels sat between his attorneys. His once confident posture now diminished by months of pretrial detention and the weight of overwhelming evidence against him. Over the next 3 weeks, prosecutors methodically presented their case: body camera footage, civilian video, medical testimony about Maya's injuries, expert analysis of police procedures. The recovered text messages showing Daniels had targeted Maya specifically because of her Black Lives Matter keychain and participation in school board meetings, advocating for diverse curricula. Former fellow officers testified about Daniels' history of excessive force against black residents and the department's pattern of protecting officers like him. Most damaging was the testimony from Officer Reeves, who described in detail how the department had systematically falsified reports and covered up misconduct. The defense strategy centered on the split-second decision narrative that had protected countless officers before, the argument that policing required instantaneous judgments in potentially dangerous situations. But this approach crumbled under cross-examination when prosecutors showed that the entirety of Daniels' interaction with Maya had been marked by escalation rather than de-escalation, by assumption of threat rather than a presumption of innocence. After just 7 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict guilty on all counts. Similar outcomes followed in the trials of 8 other indicted officers, including former Chief Holloway and Deputy Chief Barrett. The sentences handed down were unprecedented in their severity. Daniels received 23 years in federal prison, while Holloway and Barrett each received 15 years for their roles in enabling and covering up department misconduct. The convictions sent shockwaves through police departments nationwide. The blue wall of silence, which had protected officers from consequences for generations, suddenly seemed less impenetrable. In the aftermath of the trials, the Department of Justice announced the complete restructuring of the Riverdale Police Department. Under federal oversight, the department would be rebuilt from the ground up, with new leadership training protocols, accountability measures, and community involvement at every level. The consent decree mandated reforms that went far beyond symbolic changes: mandatory bias training for all personnel, community oversight, with real disciplinary authority, transparent complaint procedures, strict body camera requirements, regular audits of enforcement patterns to identify racial disparities, and psychological screening for new recruits and current officers. While these institutional changes unfolded, Maya established the Elijah Wilson Foundation, named after her son, to support victims of police violence. The foundation provided legal assistance, mental health services, and financial support to individuals and families affected by excessive force, with a particular focus on helping children process trauma. No child should have to grow up afraid of the people who are supposed to protect them, Maya explained at the foundation's launch. And no parent should have to teach their child that their skin color might make them a target. Elijah's first birthday became an unexpected moment of community healing. What began as a small celebration grew into a gathering of hundreds, as supporters, advocates, and families touched by similar experiences came together to celebrate not just a child's milestone, but a community's resilience. The party, held in a local park, featured a professional photographer documenting the joy and connection that had emerged from tragedy. For Zora, the legal victory led to new professional opportunities and responsibilities. Appointed to a state task force on police reform, she worked to expand the lessons from Riverdale to departments across Georgia. Her expertise was sought by legislators, drafting new laws on qualified immunity, use of force standards, and police accountability. She frequently testified before state and federal committees, always grounding her policy recommendations in the personal story that had started her journey. Officer Reeves, despite receiving immunity for his testimony, chose to resign from policing altogether. The experience had fundamentally changed his understanding of the profession and his role within it. He began speaking to police academies about the culture that enabled abuse and the importance of moral courage in standing against misconduct. While his reception among police was often hostile, his perspective as a former insider lent powerful credibility to reform efforts. For Maya, the return to teaching marked an important step in reclaiming her life. Her first day back in the classroom was marked by joy and tears as students and parents welcomed her with handmade cards, flowers, and heartfelt embraces. Many of the children had questions about her experience, which she answered with age-appropriate honesty, turning her trauma into a lesson about fairness, courage, and standing up for what's right. The FBI investigation that had begun with Maya's shooting eventually expanded to 3 neighboring police departments where similar patterns of discrimination and misconduct were identified. The systemic nature of the problem suggested that what had been uncovered in Riverdale was not an isolated case, but part of a broader pattern that existed in varying degrees across American law enforcement. Tanya Jackson, whose video had been instrumental in revealing the truth, found her own life transformed by the experience. Encouraged by community members who recognized her courage, she ran for city council on a platform of accountability and transparency in government. Her grassroots campaign, fueled by volunteers and small donations, succeeded in unseating a 3-term incumbent who had consistently supported the police department without question. 1 year after the shooting, Maya led a march through Riverdale that followed the route from where she was pulled over to the hospital where she had fought for her life. Thousands joined her, including many former skeptics who had been convinced by the overwhelming evidence revealed during the trials. The march ended at the site of the newly established community police station that had replaced the traditional precinct in Maya's neighborhood. The facility, designed with community input, included social services, mental health resources, youth programs, and unarmed community safety officers, alongside a much smaller traditional police presence. As the community gathered around the new station, Maya addressed the crowd with Elijah on her hip, now a healthy, happy toddler, showing no visible signs of the trauma that had marked his early months. "A year ago, I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed, uncertain if I would ever hold my son again," she began. "Today, we stand together as witnesses to what's possible when we refuse to accept injustice as inevitable." She gestured to the new facility behind her. "This building represents a promise. That public safety belongs to the public, that protection shouldn't depend on the color of your skin, that accountability isn't the enemy of effective policing but its foundation." The crowd erupted in applause, but Maya raised her hand for silence, her expression turning serious. "But our work isn't finished. What happened to me wasn't the result of one bad officer or one flawed department. It was the predictable outcome of systems designed to protect power rather than people. Changing those systems requires more than reform. It requires reimagining what safety means for all of us." As Maya concluded her speech, Agent Rodriguez approached her quietly, asking for a private word. Away from the crowd, Rodriguez revealed the final twist in the case. Evidence had surfaced, showing that the shooting had not been impulsive but planned. Digital forensics had recovered deleted messages between Daniels and several senior officers discussing targeting Maya specifically because of her involvement in community activism that hadn't been previously disclosed. Her advocacy for police accountability measures at city council meetings and work organizing parents to demand more diverse educational materials had placed her on what officers called their special attention list. This wasn't a traffic stop gone wrong, Rodriguez explained. This was a deliberate attempt to intimidate a vocal community member. They just didn't expect you to survive, or for there to be video, or for your sister to be who she is. The revelation led to new federal conspiracy charges against former leadership and opened the door to much broader reform across the state. It confirmed what many had suspected, that police violence was not just the result of individual prejudice or split-second decisions, but sometimes a deliberate strategy to maintain control and silence dissent. For Maya and Zora, this final piece of the puzzle brought a complex mix of emotions: vindication, renewed anger, but also strengthened resolve. They tried to silence one voice, Maya told her sister after processing the news. Instead, they created thousands. As the sun set on that anniversary gathering, Maya watched Elijah playing with other children in the community garden planted beside the new police station. From her tragedy had emerged the beginnings of transformation, not just for Riverdale, but potentially for policing across America. The path forward would not be straight or simple, but for the first time in generations it seemed possible to imagine a system of public safety that truly served and protected everyone equally. What do you think about the transformation that happened in Riverdale? Would a similar approach work in your community? If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of justice, and share this video with someone who needs to understand the reality of racial injustice in America. Comment below with your thoughts on what real police accountability should look like. Thank you for listening to Maya and Elijah's story. Together we can build a world where such stories no longer need to be told. Maya and Elijah's story teaches us that systems of injustice can only persist in silence and darkness. When brave individuals like Maya, Zora, Tanya, and Officer Reeves choose to speak truth despite threats and intimidation, even the most entrenched corruption can be dismantled. True change requires more than removing bad apples. It demands examining and transforming entire institutions built on historical biases. The Riverdale case demonstrates that police accountability isn't opposed to public safety, but essential to it. Communities are safest when those entrusted with protection are held to the highest standards and truly represent those they serve. This story also reveals the power of documentation in an age where video evidence can overcome official narratives, giving voice to those previously silenced. Perhaps most importantly, Maya's journey reminds us that trauma can be transformed into purpose. By channeling her pain into advocacy, she created meaning from suffering and built a legacy of justice that extended far beyond her personal vindication. The path to equality and justice is never complete, but progress becomes possible when communities unite across differences to demand that our institutions live up to their highest ideals rather than protecting their worst abuses. What would you do if faced with injustice in your community? Would you have the courage to speak out like Maya, Zora, and Tanya? Has your perspective on police accountability changed after hearing this story? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button to help it reach more viewers who need to hear these crucial messages about justice and accountability. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that expose injustice and celebrate those fighting for change. Share this video with someone who might not understand the reality of systemic racism. Sometimes stories reach people in ways that statistics never could. Thank you for joining me in bearing witness to Maya and Elijah's journey. Together, we can build communities where justice isn't just an ideal, but a lived reality for everyone regardless of race or background. Stay strong, stay informed, and never stop using your voice for what's right.